make the link with the Fit for 55 package in the EU. The objective is set for 2030 of 20 million tons of hydrogen. We realize now that it will require so much electricity, approximately 1/3 of the electricity of Europe. So the goal has been split in two, half produced in Europe, which is already a challenge, and half imported within the EU. So I see now a number of projects supported by European companies to manufacture hydrogen in Africa with the aim to export the molecule to Europe, even if the losses are at 80%, but that's another story. And so one project, the Serowe Hydrogen Hub in Botswana, is seen as one of the largest hydrogen production in Africa. It will rely on intermittent wind and solar electricity, so which has to be built in Botswana. But when we look at Botswana, 30% of the population has no access to electricity, and 100% of the electricity is currently produced from fossil fuels, mostly coal imported from South Africa. So when I listen to your speech, I believe we agree that hydrogen production for export shall not be prioritized over the basic energy needs of the populations, and then the necessary decarbonization of their own electricity. So how can Europe, according to you, and Africa cooperate and set the frame of international law and regulations which will protect the local population before any export?
Just on this question of hydrogen, we will have a specific PhD on this question, important question, and I think that the project will be launched in October, so we will launch the recruitment in September, October. So,
it's a great question, and I think that there are other experts in the room that could also layer into this. I want to just come back to the sort of the hypothesis that you laid that we shouldn't prioritize hydrogen over local energy access. Completely agreed. I would nuance that by saying, for me, it's almost a yes and situation. Because if you take Kenya, for example, alongside Botswana, Namibia and Kenya are two other countries that are very aggressively exploring hydrogen capacity. In Kenya, we have about 2,700 megawatts of peak energy demand. At any time in the year, that's likely to be the highest level of demand that you'll get. But we have well over 3,000, in fact, almost 4,000 gigawatts of power on the grid. So Kenya is a really interesting paradox where you have more than 30% of the population still doesn't have access to electricity, but you're telling me that you have excess, you have a gigawatt's worth of excess power on the grid. How is that making sense? And part of the challenge is around the cost of that electricity. Because even if it's available, if it's too expensive to use, it might as well not be there, right? And so this is a really big challenge, the affordability challenge. When we talk about energy access on the continent, we're actually talking about affordability, reliability, and quality of service. And so one of the opportunities is if we had international levels of manufacturing and industry coming to, say, the Nairobi environs into special economic zones set up for industry, would they be able to draw down on the power that we have existing? And if they were, would that improve the economics? And if the economics is improved, does that lower the cost per unit to everyone else? And so there's potentially a real added value of having manufacturing and having hydrogen production come to places like this where you have this excess of power because it brings the cost down for everyone and actually may be a boon to energy access for people that live what we call under the grid, where there's connection available, but you can't access it because it's too expensive. So that's my only caveat there is, and there's a fantastic TED talk by a very dear friend of mine, James Mwangi, on this same topic, and he sort of makes the case for how manufacturing and how hydrogen can actually be an opportunity for both solving industrialization and energy access at the same time. So that's my only caveat there. But to your question about how Europe can be involved, I think it comes down to partnership. Germany is very heavily involved in the hydrogen expansion that I spoke about in Namibia. I was just there in September of last year and got to see what a lot of these deals are looking like early on for myself. the challenge will continue to be fair ownership, right? And who actually owns the resources, who owns the technology, and what commodity prices will essentially be observed. So I think partnership and really thinking through these sort of bilateral relationships right now, because there isn't sort of a ready commercial market for hydrogen, it's really happening through these bilateral deals. Ensuring that those are above board is really, really critical to making sure that this new wave of technology doesn't replicate some of the challenges that we've seen in the past.